Hello, it's criminal profiler Pat Brown, and I'm back where, for everybody who's been here waiting for the show, we had internet problems and I had to reboot. Um, just crossing fingers now. So thank you guys for coming back because can you see me and hear me now? Is it like working? Please? Is it working? Somebody tell me this is working. I see everybody here. It's less blurry. I don't know what less blurry means, but better. Okay. I'm going to have to go with it because we're waiting on the router from Verizon. It was supposed to be here last Tuesday. Another supply chain issue, apparently. It didn't show up. So, okay, better. All right, let's see if we get through the show. And if we don't, then there'll be well, I'll link in again for part two. So hopefully when it's here, this will stop because it's all been happening in the last couple of weeks. So I'm glad you're all saying it's better. Whew. Okay, all right, let's move on. Again, if you're new to the show, please do just subscribe to the channel. Subscribers make a huge difference in the algorithms, and this is a highly demonetized channel due to my discussions of crime. So please at least subscribe to the channel if you like it. And if you want to be more involved with the community, in the live chats, in the live hangouts, in the live phone-ins, go to Patreon and click on that below because that helps support the channel and keeps it going. And if you wonder why you're not in the chat room here and you're like, well, I used to be able to come into your chat room, it's because of all the bots and the haters and the it just too much nastiness in that room. And now I have great people, all kinds of wonderful people. Oh, but Lakeside says I'm still glitchy. Yeah, this is very frustrating. Okay, I can see Evelina, I can see Alicat and Steve and Paul and Ann and K-Rob and Benny's here and Lisa's here and Doreen's here and Molly's here and Steve's here. Oh, and Diane's here and Christine's here and Annie was here. I don't know if Annie got back. Carrie's here. If I missed anybody, Benny's here. Paul's here. Oh my goodness. David's here. Okay, and Martin's here. And I might have missed somebody because it's starting out so well today. Okay, so what am I talking about here? I'm not really going to be going into the life and times of Dennis Rader. That has been done to death. And when he was proclaimed to be BTK, there was a huge amount of publicity. And then he went into the courtroom and he confessed or gave the stories of 10 crimes which he was supposedly responsible for. Now, be aware, when I'm talking about Dennis Rader, I'm not saying he's not a serial killer. He's that indeed. He's a serial killer. The question comes down to, was he the original BTK? Now, my point is not to prove or disprove whether he was the original BTK. And I'm going to explain this in a minute. My point here is to show how linkage of crime works and how we are often misled by the media and sometimes law enforcement and by the internet into believing certain things without actual proof. Now, interestingly enough, things can be true without proof. But the fact is, if we don't have proof, we actually don't know if they're true. We can say, like it's probable, but that's different than proof. And he never went to court. He never went through a prosecution. He just simply stood up and told his stories, and that was the end of that. He took some kind of plea deal. So that's the point of me doing the show today, is to show you what actually you probably have no clue about. Most people don't because they only know what they've been told. And it's really fascinating what's behind the scenes that throws things a whole different light in these cases. So if you don't know who Dennis Rader is, let me just give you the shortest Wikipedia version. It says here, Dennis Rader is an American serial killer. That's very true. Known as BTK, which is also true. An abbreviation he gave himself. Maybe, if he's the original BTK. Between 1974 and 1991, Rader killed 10 people in Wichita and Park City, Kansas. Again, not proven. Rader killed many people, has been proven, but we don't know that he killed 10. This is my whole point of the show. And sent taunting letters to police and newspapers. Yes, he did. about his crimes. After a decade-long hiatus, which we don't know was true either, and I'm going to get to that. They say, he did all this stuff and then he took 10 years off. Now, sometimes serial killers do take a break. They do. They take a break because it's there's too much pressure on them, so something goes wrong. Maybe they become ill. There's reasons. But 10 years is a long time, so a lot of times when they say he took a hiatus, it's because they don't have proof of other crimes he committed. So, or they do, but they don't want to charge him with those. That's another whole issue, because there was a theory that he actually committed crimes after the death penalty was restored in Kansas. And in order to get him to confess, they penalty attached. We'll just charge you with all the rest of them, and you just go ahead with the program and, confess to the original crimes of BTK, and we're all good. And that happened, but we'll never really know. So anyway, he is serving 10 consecutive life sentences. And so that's the basics of this. Now, is that really what happened? And some of it is what happened. Some of it is not what happened. Wait a minute, I thought you couldn't do that. Wait a minute. Okay, now I'm really curious, Benny. Thank you for a super sticker. I didn't think you could have super stickers if the show... Oh, you know what? You know what's happened? This is interesting. Oh my goodness. This show actually is live to the public and is not just for Patreon people, because when I had to redo the show in an emergency, I didn't hit private. So thank you, Benny. And if you're here today, who normally you folks can't come in and see the show because you haven't joined Patreon, it's your lucky day. Because I did make it private for Patreon only, so that I would have pleasant chat rooms. But because we had technical problems, I redid it, and I didn't go through the whole process of blocking this from the public. So anyway, so if you're here today, you get us. Yeah, Claire says, I was wondering. Yeah, I went to private because of the problems I was having. So today is going to be a free day for you guys. And you can see what it's like to be in the chat room. And if you enjoy that, it's just $5 a month. You can pick different shows. And $5 a month helps this channel, because otherwise I won't survive. So we have quieter, pleasant chat rooms, and we also have support for the channel. But today's your lucky day if you're here, because everything has gone kablooey. So Molly says, welcome to everyone except bots and baddies, which is why I normally don't have this open, because it's insane. So well, Lisa says, wow, great. Welcome to all of you who don't normally get to see Pat live. Oh, yeah, that's true. But join Patreon. It's $5 a month. My God, it's like 75 cents a show. And even if you don't come to them all, it's maybe $1 a show. And it keeps the channel going. And believe me, I desperately need this, because, because this is an educational channel, I don't have the hordes of people following me because I'm, telling them all kinds of, gossipy stories. So anyway, but all right, let's get to what I want to teach you about Dennis Rader and BTK. I actually worked on this case, not with the police, but I had received a lot of people back in the day, and we're talking way back when, before Dennis Rader, anybody had a clue about Dennis Rader. I got phone calls from people saying, you need to come out and check out this guy, because we believe he might be BTK. And this wasn't just one person. This was quite a few people, including the police. I did not work with them. I did have contact with them. So I came out, and then after I started investigating this one particular person who was very interesting, then a new documentary channel joined, and they came out and they actually videotaped him giving a statement, and he went on and on. So he was very cooperative. Of course, claimed he wasn't BTK, but he was very interesting, and he made some statements that to this day make me wonder if he was not the original BTK. Well, thank you, Alley Cat. That's very cool. Thank you very much. Get some good mods. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could do that. I just really want an educational channel where it's very peaceful. And what country are you coming out of, Robert? If you don't know who BTK is. Okay, I just explained this. BTK is the name given to a guy who killed theoretically somewhere around 10 people. This is the man, Dennis Rader, who was convicted of the BTK killings. They were called bind, torture, kill. Let me show you one of the books written. Bind, torture, kill. Okay? And Dennis Rader is considered the guy who was the guy. Now, but the story is a little more complicated than this. All right? So if you go on the internet, this is the problem with the internet too. If you go on the internet and you put in Dennis Rader and, oh wow, you're from Uruguay, oh, very cool. Okay, free ride today, yes. Absolutely free ride. If you go to the internet and you put in BTK, you come up with Dennis Rader without question. You will hear the story over and over and over and over, the same exact story. Now, what happens with journalism these days, each journalistic agency or newspaper or whatever doesn't do their own research. It used to be that way. You know, you had reporters and they went out and they actually reported on something. Now what happens is the agencies just basically steal stuff from each other. So once you get one story on the internet, there will be 200, 300 different smaller groups that just glom on and they steal the information and just put it up as their own. So then what happens is when you go on the internet and you look up the story, you'll find the same information on every single site and you assume this is the truth because you can't get any other information. Everybody's saying the same thing. There's this huge choir saying the same thing. So why would you doubt them? Why would you think something else is going on when every single person's saying the same thing? But that's the problem. They're only saying the same thing. They're repeating somebody else's story. So almost word for word usually. So the problem is we can't get to the actual truth because of this very large orchestra of, the same tune being said over and over again. And then after a while, people just believe it and they say, well, that must be it. That must be it. So anyway, so here is what I want to try to get through to you is there's a lot more behind this. And what you saw that happened with Dennis Rader is not the truth. Now, here's something I wrote many years ago. Will the real BTK Strangler please stand up? And I remember when this happened. So I was in Minnesota at the time. I was standing in my sister's kitchen. And all of a sudden it came up on the internet, on the TV, that Dennis Rader had been arrested. And there was this huge, everybody, a lot of backslapping going on. Yeah, we did it. They had everybody represented from all the agencies. And they had the Wichita PD, that's Wichita, Kansas. That's the location that the crimes occurred in. Wichita PD, the KBI, that's the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, and the FBI, who've been on this case for years. They all were there, all slapping each other, saying, we got him, and we did all these wonderful things, and they were great, and they were great, and they were great. And I'm sitting there watching this going, it's been 31 years. It's not great. This is a failure of an investigation. You had 3 departments, including the FBI, all involved. People like John Douglas, and they had even a group Kansas put together called the Ghostbusters, and to go after BTK. And this went on for 3 decades, and they never caught him. They had lots of suspects, but they never got anywhere. This is not a successful investigation. So what actually happened was in 2004, after the 30th anniversary went out, they got this funny letter in that said, hey, I'm BTK. And this guy had started sending letters saying, hey, I'm the one who did it. And he screwed up. He did something really dumb, and he got caught. So they eventually closed the case based on this man's error, not because they did great investigation. So if you're looking at how to investigate a serial homicide, this isn't it. It didn't work. Now, I'm not going to say they didn't work hard. I'm just saying it didn't work. So when they did this hurrah, hurrah, hurrah thing, everybody thought it was because these 3 agencies putting efforts together had brilliantly come up with this guy. And it's not true. It's they got lucky. All right. After they got lucky, this went on. So I wrote this, that there was a 3-day Dennis Rader show, okay? And he ended up in court, and he gave statements on each one of the crimes in court. But what people don't recognize is that they never showed the evidence that linked him to those crimes. They just had him talking about the crimes. Now, but first of all, it's been 30 years. A lot of information's leaked out over 30 years. So even if you didn't commit every one of those crimes, you might indeed be a person who knows quite a lot. Then we don't know about the earlier interrogations and interviews that the police had with Dennis Rader. So once they arrested him, I don't see anything that shows us what the interrogations were like. So we don't have like the first interrogation of Dennis Rader on YouTube. We see nothing until the court date. So I'm like, how do we know that he wasn't fed information, that he wasn't corrected, that he wasn't shown things? We don't know. We have no clue because it's not there. I don't see any police reports of the early interrogations. I don't see transcripts. I don't see anything. They never presented a case in court, ever. So that's kind of weird. But people believe because they heard from his lips, and I have a link below to his full confession in court. He's creepy as heck, and he's a serial killer, and he did commit some of those crimes. I'm not saying he didn't, but in court they never proved that he did these crimes. Now, I'm not going to say there are certain connections to certain crimes, but not necessarily all of the crimes. So here's what we don't know. All right. The 3-day Dennis Rader show was not about proving he committed each and every one of the 10 crimes with which he was charged. And it was not about hearing more testimony so the judge could figure out how to sentence him. Because after all, the gruesome crimes that he did commit, he's going to get life no matter what, right? So it was ridiculous. The circus was about directing the focus of the public away from an embarrassingly unsuccessful police investigation and away from the lack of prosecutorial presentation of evidence that would uncontrovertibly prove Rader's guilt. So they didn't have the evidence to prove that he committed each one of these crimes. So they didn't want to go there. They just said, hey, dude, just confess to them all. We'll give you a little deal. The idea was for us to be so fascinated with Dennis Rader and his bizarre behavior, so entranced by his accounts or absolute lies about how he committed these crimes, so disgusted and repelled by the man, that we will actually forget to question how the investigation was handled and what the truth might actually be about the whole Btk Strangler debacle. All right, so this is a problem. No, and this is a good point here too. In other words, he took the rap for a certain benefit. He might have. Now, I'm not saying he didn't commit the crimes. I'm saying that he might not have committed, in my opinion, the first 2 crimes. But we won't know if he did or he didn't because we have no proof one way or the other. And yes, he also liked publicity. So what will happen a lot of times is if you tell a serial killer, look, I'll give you a deal if you'll confess to a few more crimes, they're like, damn, I'll go for that. I get to be creepier than, and more famous, and I get a deal. Sure, why not? I'll do it. So that's kind of the thing that happened. So what they did was the prosecution did not present any evidence whatsoever in the courtroom that he committed these crimes. None. People don't remember this. None. Here's another thing. What people do remember was that he had a daughter, and they did a familial DNA thing. They got this DNA, I thought it was kind of a creepy way through some medical testing that she had done. And they said it connected him to Btk. Now, listen to this. Previous police statements said that Rader's DNA matched DNA from at least one Btk scene. At least one. At the trial, Lieutenant Landwehr, he's the main guy that later came onto the case later on with the Ghostbusters stuff. He wasn't the original investigator, but he was a later one. He stated that Rader's DNA matched the DNA from 2 of the crime scenes. oddly, he did not state which two. Now, you know, evidence is evidence. If it's that crime scene, you say it matched that crime scene. You should be able to prove it with the actual DNA reports. Hey, look, this one matches this one. But that's not what happened. It was stated that it matched now 2 of the crime scenes. Really? Okay. Which crime scenes? Okay, I'm going to go into the different crimes in a minute. But there is a crime scene called Otero's, and that's the first crime that that BTK supposedly committed, and I'll explain this in a minute. The Otero DNA for years has been said to be too degraded to do a full DNA profile on. And the other one they say it could have been connected to was Vicky Wegerle, her husband, until 2005, until certain pieces of information got to the police. He was considered a suspect in 2005, so clearly if they had good DNA, the husband wouldn't have been a suspect. So something a little fishy there. So now they're saying that there's DNA under her fingernails. Well, maybe they didn't analyze it properly. Maybe the analysis wasn't as good until that point in time. But right now, it appears that that is the one, if they had him actually linked to one, would be the Vicky Wegerle crime, which he also sent her. He also had her IDs. So he killed Vicky Wegerle. There's no question about it. Is that the one crime? But if that's the only crime, how are they linking him to all the other crimes? You see? All the other, quote, BTK crimes. How is that happening if the DNA isn't actually doing it? Because they're not saying there's other actual DNA that's linking him to those crimes. So it gets very, very confusing. So now I'm going to go back and tell you a little bit about this. I'm going to show you 2 books, and this is fascinating too. This is called Nightmare in Wichita, The Hunt for the Btk Strangler. It's written by Robert Beatty. I think he was a professor at a college. And this is written by Bind, Torture, Kill. Is written by a bunch of people who were involved in the media there and got together after Dennis Rader was caught. So you're going to see some very interesting differences between these 2 books. And one of the things you see is that this book has the story before Dennis Rader. And just in the end, there's a little added piece here. Oh, look, they caught Dennis Rader. I think that was put in on a later edition. This book tells you much more of the truth than this book, because this book edits out everything that doesn't make Dennis Rader look guilty and edits out everything about police investigations and other suspects that they don't want to admit to too much, you know. So this is really edited because now they have a killer. So that's always questionable there. Yes, Lisa, it is complicated, so you might have to go back to the start. But what I'm going to do now is explain the original crime. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to read you a little from this one, which is what the first crime was like before anybody knew anything, right? And you get much more interesting information when you don't have an agenda on the case at this point. So this is what happened. And I got this book years ago when I was working on this case. All right, now listen to something very interesting here. This is the introduction. For over 30 years, from 1974 to 2004, the serial killer self-named BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill, had telephoned and written to police and press advising that he was still stalking victims, still waiting in the dark and preparing to kill again. He murdered at least 10 people and attempted to murder 6 more. Really? Okay. Where's the 6 more is interesting because one of the things you'll see in this book is they have all these other cases in Wichita, Kansas, and in the vicinity, which BTK could have done. On the other hand, some other serial killer could have done those, or they could have overlapped. But when you get to the newer book, those kind of vanish. So here you're seeing so many other crimes, you're like, wait a minute, it's just, no wonder it's confusing, because there's not just 10 people murdered, there's 20, 30 people murdered in those years, 40 people. Now we don't know who did what. All right, now check this out. It says now, BTK is now in his 4th decade of committing state and federal crimes, including making death threats. he has been suspected of committing murders outside of Kansas. Because when you go to the Dennis Rader trial, they will claim he committed only 10 murders and no others. Now, why is that? Maybe he did commit others. What happened in all that time? He supposedly was just like taking a vacation. Why are they saying here now he might have killed somebody outside of Kansas? At one time, police concluded he had murdered a New York resident in New Orleans, Louisiana, but they kept that secret. Now, you see, this is before they found out this guy. So you see, they're looking at all kinds of interesting stuff. Now, all right. The author is saying that he met many officers and detectives who worked on the BTK investigation, and they told me many facts about the investigation. So let me tell you something. A lot of information was out there for him to use when he got to the courtroom. So whenever wouldn't have known it unless he had committed the crime. Not so true. All right. And interesting enough, when he talks about the Otero homicides, which I'm going to detail in a few minutes, he says the word think and guess an awful lot during that portion of his confession. And I wonder why he's only thinking and guessing. Doesn't he know? Okay. So anyway, now, now she talks about a lot of mistaken information, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the slaughter begins. So now, this gets really tricky with the Oteros. Let me put the Oteros up here. So these are the first people that were killed. This is the Otero family. By the way, these are all the people that Btk is supposed to have killed. These are the 10 people he supposedly has killed. I'll show you this little. It'll show here when they happened. So in 1974. The family of the Oteros, there were 4 family members killed. The other 3 children were at school and not in the home. So the father, the mother, and 2 of their children, Joseph Jr. and Josephine, were killed. Then just also in just a few months later, in April, there was the murder of Catherine Bright. Okay, so these 2 are very close, and there's an interesting connection between the 2 cases. Then 3 years goes by. Now, Dennis Rader will claim that it's because his wife got pregnant and he had better things to do. Okay. Sure. And then so 1977 is where these start up, okay? Shirley Vian, then Nancy Fox, Maureen Hedge, and Vicki Wegerle, and then Doris Davis. I'm going to say, I believe Dennis Rader committed all 5 of these. I have no question about the chances. I'm pretty sure he committed all 5 of these. This is my point. There's a 3-year lapse here. So either he really was into those babies, or maybe he didn't commit these crimes, and he picked up as a copycat for these crimes. But I'm not going to say this is true. I'm just going to say, let's take a look at these things. So the first case happened in this house. This is the Otero's house. And these are the Oteros that got killed. Mr. and Mrs. Otero and their 2 children. And the other 3, again, were not home. All right. Now, he had actually moved from Panama to Kansas. And then he went to Oaklawn, Kansas, and then he went to Wichita, Kansas. And so the family, it gets really complicated here because the family, he was in the Air Force. There's a whole lot of issues of what he was involved with in Panama. There was a suspect actually running around at the time that was connected to the CIA, it's a good story, and I'll tell you that in a minute. Okay, so anyway, they found this family. There's a son, Charlie, and Charlie was the oldest son, and he comes home. I think it was the oldest son. Maybe. And anyway, Charlie eventually basically said, okay, Dennis Rader may have killed my family, but Charlie was not heavily convinced on it. I've talked to Charlie, and he did not seem to think that, he wasn't sure about Dennis Rader. Anyway, he comes home and he finds mom and dad. Joseph over here is found with his body face down on the floor. His wrists and ankles are bound with cord from Venetian blinds. Julie, his wife, was found lying face down on the bed, also bound. Charlie used a kitchen knife to cut the ropes off his father's neck and then his mother. And then the officers arrived, and they also found that down the, let's see, there were the two children were also killed, and the creepiest part was that this little girl, she was taken down to the basement and she was hung, and this is where the guy got sexually off on what he was doing, and he didn't rape her, but he ejaculated on her, and that's where the first theory of semen came from. There was semen at the scene, but the question was it good enough to do anything with? It was highly degraded. They did do at the time a little bit of studies on the semen, and they came up with that the guy was a non-secretor, which is about 11% of the male population. And the suspect I had looked at was indeed a non-secretor, which is why he was an interesting suspect. But the DNA wasn't strong at the time, and I don't believe the DNA was ever proven in this crime either. So anyway, this is the family that got knocked off. And let's see what happened here. I want to tell you a little bit about the theories on this. All right, so, let me tell you what else also happened. They canvassed the neighborhood. They found a witness that said they thought a guy with a Middle Eastern appearance was driving around. That was a theory. That also, according to Charlie, his father had an appointment and was not expected to return home that early. Normally he went and took the kids back and forth to school, so normally he would be there. And this particular point, he had an appointment and wasn't expected to be home as early. So one of the questions is, did someone understand the Otero's schedule? Now, Dennis Rader says he did not know these people at all. He just thought she was hot, apparently because she's Hispanic. That's all Dennis Rader ever said. Dennis Rader does not know these people. He did not work with them. He had no reason to have any clue about them, except he supposedly said he drove by and saw her. So he decided he would go into their home and then got surprised by Mr. Otero. That's sort of the claim. Okay, so, but after the crime was committed, the Otero station wagon was taken from the home. The killer took the station wagon, drove it away from the home, and parked it in the Dillon's grocery store. It's about, let's see, it wasn't very far away, but, enough of a distance that, so the guy drove it to the Dillon's grocery store, left the car there, and walked away. Now, here, the front seat had been pulled all the way forward as if a short person had been driving it. Which, when people were thinking maybe a Hispanic guy did this, maybe he's a shorter dude, you know what I mean? So maybe he's 5'6", 5'5". Dennis Rader is a 5'11". He's not short. My suspect in this was 5'10". But Dennis Rader later claimed that he moved the seat up to make it look like a short person had been driving it. Really? Or was he fed some information? Okay. The car keys are found on the roof of the grocery store, so somebody chucked the keys. A woman in the parking lot saw the man who had parked the Otero station wagon. She just thought he was shaking and trembling like he was freaked out. Okay, I want you to just remember, this is Dillon's, and this is the parking lot. And this is really important when it comes down to suspects. Suspects usually behave in a way where they are familiar with certain things. So this family, the mother worked at a place called Coleman's, okay? Am I right there? Oh, wait a minute. I'm drawing a blank on the name. Let me be sure I got that right before I screw that up. Is it Coleman's? Sorry. This was a big, it was a big, hold on a second here. I just want to make sure I'm not making up something that's not true. Okay, I want to be sure I have the correct name here. Okay, let's see. Okay, I want to talk about that in a minute. Okay, where is it here? No, I can't find it. Great. I'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, that's where she worked. And then the other girl who was killed next, Catherine Bright, worked at in the same company. So she worked the company and she worked in the company. And that was interesting because one of the questions was, did a person who worked for the company have something to do with it? Okay. Let me just see if I can pull up my other piece of information here before because I hate not remembering names, but I blanked on this. Okay. What is the name of it? I think it's Coleman's. If I give the wrong name, so there's where the haters come in and say, you don't even know what you're talking. Yeah, it is Coleman's. Okay, all right. So she worked for Coleman's and just been let go, and she worked for Coleman's. So this is important in this whole thing, and so is the Dillon's location where the car was dumped. So somebody saw him doing that. So anyway, meanwhile, they're trying to figure out who the heck killed this family. Now listen to this. Joseph Otero joined the Air Force in New York City on May 1952, and he stayed in there, and he was stationed in the Panama Canal Zone. He was an aircraft mechanic for General Omar Torrijos, the de facto leader of Panama. It is possible Otero was known to the chief of military intelligence, Manuel Noriega. And there's a whole bunch of issues about drug issues. And so then apparently they're also connected to Puerto Rico. According to the Otero family member in Puerto Rico, 2 unknown men ran Joseph out the road with their car less than 2 weeks before his murder. Joseph reported that he had broken 2 ribs on his steering wheel when the car ran into a curb. He had no idea why the men had run him off the road. Okay? However, in July of 2004, Charlie Otero told me that his father had told him his rib injuries were a result of the car sliding on ice into a bridge abutment. Another possibility was that drugs were involved in the Otero murders. On January 14, 1974, the day before the Otero murders, an aircraft from Puerto Rico en route to Wichita had crashed in Florida, carrying 1.5 tons of marijuana. So there's this issue. Was there something else going on with the Panama connection, with the Puerto Rico connection, with drug connections? Was there more going on with this family than just a serial killer? And that is a good question. There was a renowned FBI agent who was involved in a Florida and Caribbean drug trade who stole money and ended up being bounced out of the FBI and getting very little penalty for it. But he moved to Kansas, and his daddy was a famous CIA agent who had been killed by the Tupamaros Indians in Uruguay. So, you got some, and he also was hooked up in Panama and supposedly with Jim Jones. So, you have these weird connections, and I'm not going to get into those heavily. That's a whole nother show. But could this whole Panama, Uruguay, Puerto Rico, Florida drug connection and these interesting characters? By the way, just so you know, the name, the guy who was murdered in Uruguay, the CIA agent, was Dan Mitrione Sr. His son was Dan Mitrione Jr. He was the FBI agent who was involved in the drug trade and questionable homicide in Florida and the Bahamas. And he moved to Wichita. He moved to Kansas, not Wichita. Moved to Kansas and started writing true crime stories. You can't make this stuff up. But he was an interesting suspect at the time. So I'm telling you, it's a little more complicated than people know. And this book, because nobody's been arrested and convicted, tells you a lot of these things. So, at any rate, so let's take. It said also here that the knots that were tied at the scene were given in U.S. Commando training. Also, Boy Scouts. Could have been Boy Scouts. Joseph Otero. Here's the point here. He had a girlfriend apparently. While in Panama, Joseph Otero was a man who led 2 lives. 2 lives, almost 2 lives. In one life, he was married with 5 kids. In the other, he lived in an apartment with a girlfriend. Joseph Otero had told Julie and the children that he was an agent for the CIA. Dan Mitrione, Noriega, Panama, Uruguay. And, Dan Mitrione Jr. Could it have been true? I don't know. But the point being, see how complicated this was? This wasn't just simple, like there was no, it was just simply obviously a serial killer and obviously this and obviously that. But keep in mind, again, Coleman was where she worked and where the other girl worked who was murdered in the next crime. Keep in mind the Dillon's store where the car was dumped, because I'm going to bring that up when I show you a little bit about the suspect I was looking at. All right, so time goes on and we have the Brights. And so this girl, she was the next one. It was just a few months later. And this girl was Catherine Bright. And she was home, and her brother happened to be home with her. And so the guy came in and ended up shooting her brother in the head and then strangling her. And she ended up going to the hospital, but she died. And at any rate, they tried to get a description off of the brother. He was having trouble because he'd been shot in the head. And he said the guy was kind of shorter, a Mexican man with an olive drab military fatigue jacket. And they didn't know if that was true. But, they were looking at the Otero crime and thinking that somebody pulled the seat up. Maybe it was a shorter Hispanic-y looking dude, a Mexican looking dude. Maybe a Panamanian. Who knows? But this is what the police are dealing with. So I'm not down on the police for having to struggle through all of this kind of information. It's just craziness. So anyway, and then he kind of changed his mind and said no, he was a white guy. He was 5'10", stocky, dark brown or black hair, and a black mustache that reached the corners of his mouth, and wearing a kind of uniform. Then he went back to the kind of Hispanic-looking guy. So nobody really knows. At any rate, so that was the next one that was attacked. Now, for all of you who aren't familiar, what eventually happened was that a letter was then sent. There was a phone call made to the Wichita Eagle. Remember the word Wichita Eagle because my suspect also worked for the Wichita Eagle as well as for Coleman's. He worked for Coleman's at the time the ladies were there. He worked for the Wichita Eagle, which is why he was a good suspect. All right, somebody called and said, listen and listen good because I'm not going to repeat it. He said, there was a letter from the Otero's killer in a mechanical engineering textbook in the main Wichita Public Library. And so they went across and they found this. And I'll show you the picture of the, where is it? Hold on a second. I will show you a picture of the letter. Okay. So the picture of the letter is this. This is part of the original picture. So what the guy did was he typed up where everybody was lying, what direction they were lying, what was happening to them. Like this one, it says that the old bag trick, you can see in the middle, the old bag trick and strangulation with a clothesline rope. And it tells where each one of these, what happened to each one of the people so that the police would believe this is the real guy. And he put on the bottom, bind, torture, kill. That's where BTK came from. So that's what he put in there. And so there's a couple interesting things in this letter. One is the comment, which was he threw up one time. This is Joseph Otero. This is the dad. Let's go back to dad. Okay. So now this girl been killed already, but now we're going back to the Otero killing. So we go back to this family, and there's two things in this letter which really struck me as very interesting. Whoops. Okay, let me go back to just the Oteros. Okay, Joseph Otero. First of all, the guy calls him Joe, not Joseph, but Joe Otero, which I thought was interesting because, sometimes when you have no clue what the guy's actually called, you'll call him by the full name, which would be Joseph. But the guy called him Joe, and that made me wonder whether he was familiar with this guy. Then he wrote, he threw up at one time, had a rib injury from a wreck a few weeks ago. Now, did Joe, when he was tying up Joseph Otero, did Joe say, oh, ouch, that hurts, I got an injury from a wreck a few weeks ago? Or did the guy know he got an injury from the wreck a few weeks ago? So the question here was always, did the guy know Joe? Was he familiar with his family? Was he really a complete stranger? Because Dennis Rader was a complete stranger and only said he just thought Hispanic women were hot, and that's why he picked this family. He's a complete stranger. Other suspects were not complete strangers and might have known. Joe, they might have known the wife who was working at Coleman's, and that's the question. All right, so that's that basically thing about those two. And the other girl, Catherine Bright, worked at Coleman's as well. So there was a connection between the two women as being as being Coleman's workers. So now let me read you something from the other book, just for a second here. Sorry, that was book falling to ground. Coming back. All right, now my fuzzy. Okay, all right. Now I want to show you what they said in this book. It's called Fear and Possibilities. Was the killer someone within the family? So the police first considered that actually Joseph Otero killed his family because he could have put the ropes on himself, and he was a military guy, so he could have easily bound up the rest of them. But they got rid of that idea. Was there a drug connection? Here we go again. In the Air Force, Joseph Otero had served in Latin America. After his discharge, Joe took a job that gave him access to private airplanes. This intrigued detectives. Maybe a big overseas drug deal had gone wrong, and Joe lost his life and family in a revenge killing. So the detectives flew to Panama and to Puerto Rico to chase the idea. So supposedly they didn't find anything, so they kind of dropped it. 3, was someone out to get Julie? She had worked at Coleman. Did she have a jealous boyfriend there? Her former supervisor was shot and wounded just days before she died. Now, this is true. Was this a coincidence? Now we have 3 people. She was killed, and her supervisor was shot. 4, was the killer a thief who killed to cover his tracks? They looked at burglars, but the only things missing were Joe's watch, Joe's radio, and a set of keys. So it wasn't exactly a burglary, So that's some of the things they had been running around trying to figure out. Now, all right, so now let's move forward. All right. It's complicated, isn't it? It's a really complicated thing, but I just want you to see. Now, let's go back to this fella. Let's go to Dennis Rader and take a look when he does gives his confessions in court. As I pointed out, when he's talking about this group, the first 2 major crimes, he says think and guesses a lot. And I just wonder how much he really knows, or has he figured stuff out over time? Has he been fed information? Is he just making up stuff? Because they'll say he's a pathological liar. And he is. He's a psychopath. And he's a serial killer. He is a pathological liar. And he loves fantasy. So there's nothing to say he isn't fantasizing. And if the prosecution doesn't really care whether he's accurate, okay, they'll go along with the program. And they'll even if he's like, oh yeah, that's not right, they're okay with that. If you go and check out my video on superbikes and Todd Kolop, Todd Kolop was he confessed to the mass murder at Superbikes in South Carolina. He was a serial killer who confessed then to a mass murder of 4 people in a motorcycle shop. His story is bunk. His story is complete garbage, and I know it is because I worked that case with the police department, with the sheriff's department. But when Todd Kolop came out with his lies, the sheriff's department's like, yeah, that's right, that's what happened. And I'm like, no, it isn't what happened. I know the truth. I've seen the police reports. I've seen the autopsy reports. You're lying. You're supporting his lies. Why? Because they wanted to close down the Superbike case, and this guy was willing to confess to it. So they're like, okay, we'll just look the other way when we know he's not telling the truth, and he's making up stories about this crime. Well, is the same thing here. Do we have Dennis Rader not really having committed the first 2 crimes, but hey, he'll tell a story and then the prosecution goes, see, yeah, sure, that's what happened. Even if they know some of the stuff isn't quite accurate, and then if somebody questioned the prosecution, they would say, well, it was a long time ago. I'm sure he's forgotten a few things, and he's misremembering a few things. And it could be true. But the point is that the reason? But are you willing to allow him to confess to things you don't have any actual evidence connecting him to because you want to close those cases down? Is that these cases happened, and then 3 years passed before the other cases happened. Was he really the original BTK, or was he a copycat? He said, hey, this is cool. This other guy said he was this guy who killed these guys. He sent a letter over and said, I killed these people and I'm the BTK. And he said, I kill women too. I'm going to send some more letters. And he did send some more letters. Let's look at what he did send. Okay. So he also sent some good information, which goes to show you he did commit some crimes. Okay. Not saying he didn't. He sent this letter. All right. He sent this letter later on after he says he killed Shirley Vian. And he said in this one he killed, I think this is the one where he said he killed Nancy too. Those are two of the later crimes. And I'm good with that because he even sent over, this is Nancy Fox's actual identification, which went missing, and he has it. So, and I'm not sure. I think he sent that with the letter. So that kind of proved he killed Nancy Fox. But later on, when they investigated him, they found he had Vicky Wagerly's stuff too. So I'm going to say he killed Vicky Wagerly. He killed Nancy Fox. I have no issue with that. I think he killed a bunch of people. Now let me tell you what the evidence was of what he killed. A handwritten timeline. This is from this book. This is what the police say they found. A handwritten timeline of letters and packages he sent in 2004. Remember, he got caught in 2000. He got arrested in 2005. So after the 30-year anniversary, he just wanted, hey, I want to be famous. So he sent in some stuff that clearly let the police know that he was claiming to be BTK. He sent the original of the Wagerly letter sent to the Eagle in 2004. So he sent a copy of the letter, and then he actually had the original. That does it. Okay, I'm good. He did kill Wagerly. He also taped to the sheet of white paper were 3 original Polaroid photographs of Vicky's body and her driver's license. Okay, I'm good. He killed Vicky Wagerly, not questioning it. Then he goes on to say, original Polaroid photographs depicting Rader practicing self-bondage, sometimes wearing women's clothing, makeup, and a blonde wig. In several of the photos, Rader was wearing the mask he later left with Dolores's body. Okay, so now if you go back and look at the timeline, let's look at the timeline. So let's look at what we have evidence of. Okay, here we have absolute evidence of Nancy Fox. We have absolute evidence of Vicky Wagerly. We have absolute evidence of Dolores Davis. Let's see what else we had. We have newspaper clippings about the Bright homicide. Just newspaper clippings. See, that's not evidence, folks. I'm interested. Maybe he was obsessed with, oh, look at that. This dude killed off the Otero family. He killed, he's killed off the Bright girl. He might have cut out all those things and thought, I want to do something like this. That's not evidence he committed those crimes. That's nonsense. 3 original Polaroid pictures showing Dee in her shallow grave with Rader's mask on her face. Okay, he clearly killed Dolores Davis, no question. Is there anything else he's got here? Her driver's license and social security card. Okay, he did that. Basically, that's it. So, I have no problem with everything from 1977 on. He's a serial killer. Dude's a serial killer. The problem I have is with the Otero crime and the Bright crime. They have no evidence. So when they caught him and they looked through all his crap, he didn't have photos from those scenes. He didn't have driver's licenses from those scenes. He didn't have original typewritten letters from those scenes. He didn't. He had nothing linking him. And just his vague claim that, oh yeah, there was some DNA from some scenes, but not, if you really had DNA from this, you would be shouting that to the rooftops. We have DNA from the Otero crime scene. It clearly matches the DNA of Dennis Rader. They're not shouting that. They didn't even take it to court to prove it. They don't have the evidence to prove it. So here we have 2 crimes which he could have committed, But did he? All right, so now I want to introduce you to a suspect that I had looked at. Now, I'm going to name this guy something else. I'm going to name him John. I'll name his wife Jane. John and Jane Doe, but I know who they are. Okay, I'm going to call him John and Jane Doe. So I'm going to look at these. All right. Now, John worked at Coleman's. He did. And he worked in the Human Resources Department at Coleman's, where you could access employee records and addresses and phone numbers. Okay? I was told by a particular police detective who worked on the case at the time that he worked on the line with Julie Coleman. Okay? I wasn't able to totally verify that, but that's what this detective told me. I was also told by this same detective that my guy John was the only employee out that day, supposedly because he had a stomach ache. So all the Coleman employees were there, but my suspect John, he was out that day. All right. Now, now we take a look at, remember where the car was dumped? Yeah, the car was dumped at Dillon's grocery store. Guess who worked at Dillon's grocery store at the time? John had a brother who worked as a clerk at Dillon's grocery store. And right down the street from Dillon's grocery store, John's father lived within like a couple blocks of Dillon's grocery store. So now we have a place where he could easily have left his car at his father's house, and then he could have gone to the crime scene, stolen the Otero's car, came up to Dillon's, which he knows well, dumped the car in the parking lot where his brother worked, and then gone down to Daddy's house and picked up his car. That's why he was a huge suspect in this crime. Now, it gets interesting. Okay, so those are some basics. He worked for Coleman's, where the two ladies worked. His brother worked at Dillon's. His father lived right around the corner. All right, keep going. He was never in the military, but he told people he was. He was obsessed with the Marines, Vietnam, special ops, and covert operations. He often wore a gun around the house in his pants at home. After he got laid off from Coleman, he went to work for the Wichita Eagle, which is where so many of these letters showed up. Interesting. He worked there as a security guard, number one job of serial killers. All right, then let's see. He stalked women. He collected tarantulas. Some interesting stuff. He had peculiar behavior with children, was good at manipulating them, but also condescending to them, especially if they were small and wimpy. He had been known to lose his temper and freak out if they broke the rules. He took huge amounts of photos of women and kept them neatly categorized in boxes. He tapped their phones. He had a locked basement in the house that no one could go in. He had a safety deposit box at the bank he emptied just before the police arrived there. Okay, there's a reason that the police arrived at his house. He had a bag of pubic hair under his bed. He kept in excellent shape. He was very, very strong. He didn't look like a huge guy, but he was extremely strong. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about this. He was meticulous. He was a control freak. He spied on his wives. He was extremely mentally abusive. He wrote poems. That's interesting. All right. He seemed reserved. Other people said, but charming. But then anyway, you'll find out he was just being manipulative. He was fascinated with covert military operations, fascinated with weapons and hand-to-hand combat. Only talked about military and outdoor skills. Now, let me tell you what happened. So there were like 10 different people who talked to me, and all said the guy was a stalker, creeped them out, and they thought he was BTK. All right. But here comes the interesting story. Let me find this out. So anyway, he started dating Jane in 1987. He was very against drugs. He didn't like drugs. But apparently Jane's dog went missing because John did something weird with the dog. Anyway, okay, so let me go down to this interesting point here. Now, you might wonder what happened to to Jane. Okay? So let me find it. Okay, I got to find it because it's way down here on the list. There's lots and lots of notes. Okay, where's my notes on that? Okay, hold on a second. Maybe it's here. So anyway, what happened was John and Jane kind of got on the outs. Jane wanted out of the relationship. And you know how women do this thing where, a guy says to them, they want closure. Can we just talk? Can we have one last chance? Blah, 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 right? Well, that's what he did. So he wanted to have this little chat with his wife and have a little bit of time to, see if they could work things out. So they went on a camping trip. They did, out of state on a camping trip. And apparently one morning when he was, this is what he said. He said that in the morning she was hot and she went for a swim, but somehow she ended up drowned in a very, very shallow river. Yes, she did. And also somebody seemed to have had sex with her either right then or after she was dead. And that's how they found out he was a non-secretor like BTK. And, but, his wife was now dead on the river, so he wrapped her up in a bunch of hefty bags, put her in the canoed down the river, passed a police department, went to a big police department. He passed a big police department, went to a smaller police department, drove it, then he'd gotten her to a car. So anyway, gets to the police department with her in the trunk, and he comes in and says, yeah, I got my wife in the trunk. And they investigated it, but they could never prove that he murdered her. They could only prove that she had drowned. At any rate, that's what got the Wichita police into his home, which is why he got, they checked him all out, why they found, pubic hair under the bed. And the guy was creepy as hell and became a heck of a suspect. Now, I have one more thing to tell you about this fellow. All right, let me find it. Okay, so anyway, I'm in Wichita and this camera crew shows up, and they want to interview this guy because they think he's really interesting. So now they go over to the Wichita Eagle where he's working. And I have the videotape of this, which I'm not going to show, but I will read you some things off of my transcript of it. All right. He does state he's been swabbed. He stated he was not swabbed in the BTK case, nor has law enforcement ever talked to him about it. Okay. He also never states he's been cleared. All right. So anyway, this is what is fascinating about he really spoke to everybody. Then when he went outside, he kept running back and forth, smoking cigarettes, coming back and forth and talking to the crew. He couldn't shut up. So it's like, he really liked being on camera. I think he said in the beginning that that the BTK was wait a minute, where did I find this at? So anyway, he did say he worked at human resources at the Coleman Company. He did say that, and he laughed a bit about that. And okay, I want to find the thing that's really important. Okay, let me find it because I want his words in this and not mine. Okay, where is it? Where is it? Hold on, give me 1 second. This is the most important thing, which I think is super, super bizarre. Tremendous amount of information. Right. It was right at the end of the, oh, here we go. I had it in big, bold. Now listen to this. My brother worked at Dillon's for an extremely long time. And then they asked him about his brother working at Dillon's. And he said, yes, my brother was manager of that store. Now he is. He has racked his brain trying to figure out who this was. No, who BTK was. Because, listen to this, because he had to be in the parking lot picking up baskets at the time this person dropped off the car. Does anybody, I'm going to stop right here. Does anybody see a problem? I'm going to go to your comments, which are 700,000 now. I want to check on this one. What's wrong with this statement? Let me read it again. His brother, John's brother, has racked his brain trying to figure out who it was because he had to be in the parking lot at the time the car was dumped because he was out getting baskets. What's wrong with that statement? There's two things wrong with that statement. which I think is fascinating. Can somebody tell me? I'm waiting to hear. Somebody's got to figure this one out. I'm lost, Sonny. Okay, again, his brother's working at Dillon's. Thank you. There we go, Lakeside Justice. How did he know when the car was dropped off? Exactly. Yes, he seems to know when the car was dropped off. Remember, they didn't know within a few hours even. The car was found at night. And there was a claim that, Btk may have stayed in the Otero house a couple of hours. But at some point he took the car, dropped it at Dillon's, and walked away. How did they know exactly when that car was dumped? Right. And that is the question. John saw his brother, or his brother saw John. That's why he became a really good suspect. Because, first of all, his brother wasn't like picking up carts like every moment of the day in the lot. You know how guys come out and after a while they come out, they're working in the store, then they come out and they get a bunch of carts and then they pull them into the store. You know what I mean? That they come out every once in a while. How did he know his brother was in the lot getting the carts at that moment? And how would his brother have seen Btk? Except that at the same time, the brother was in the lot getting the baskets, he saw Btk. So that was the weirdest statement that he made. So we got a guy who worked at Coleman's. We got a guy who was supposedly missing that day. We got a guy who fits a lot of the issues that could be fitting. And we got a guy whose brother works right at the grocery store, Dillon's, and his father lives right next door. Good place to dump the car. And on top of that, his brother's. He seems to know his brother was in the lot with the carts at the exact time Btk shows up. Those are interesting things. Now, again, does this prove that John is Btk? No, even though he knew both the women, and he had all these other things, and his wife sort of like accidentally drowned in a little shallow river at the time they were going on their little camping trip to get back together again. So anyway, the original police looked at this guy as being a very good possibility for Btk. He could have nothing to do with it. But then again, Dennis Rader could have nothing to do with it either. Or it could have been John was the first Btk, Joseph, and Dennis Rader 3 years later decided to jump on as a copycat. The problem is we're not going to know. And, this is my point is at this point we can't prove one or the other. That's not the point. The problem I have is that Dennis Rader was said to absolutely have been the guy who killed the Oteros and Catherine Bright without a shred of proof. Outside of he could have done it because he's creepy enough and he killed some other people. And, So what's interesting, when you read this book, so if you read this book, you'll get all the different crimes before anybody was considered. You'll see how much the police and the FBI and everybody were going crazy trying to figure it out. You'll see profiles that were totally off. You'll see, just things that you'll see 10 other crimes they thought were connected to Btk, which they've given up on or found out they weren't connected. So there's so much more of a mishmash than you can possibly imagine. This book actually shows how the reality was. By the time you get to this book, now what they do is insert, and I think this is amusing because, okay, let's say we go back to the Otero crime, right? All right. So we were talking about the Oteros had lived in New Jersey, and then they were in the Panama Canal Zone, and now they're at home. So now they're in the house. And then the next paragraph says this. Dennis Rader had seen the woman and the girl one day while driving his wife to work at the Veterans Administration. His wife didn't like driving in the snow. On Edgemore Drive, he saw two dark-skinned females in a station wagon backing onto Murdoch Avenue. After that, he stalked them for weeks and took notes. He followed Julie several times as she drove Josie and Joey to school. He knew that they left about 8:45 and that it took Julie 7 minutes to get back home. He knew the husband left for work at 8 a.m. He did not want to confront the husband, so he timed his arrival for 8:20. The husband would be gone. The boy would be there, but he was incidental to the plan. He would kill the boy, but he did not want him. He wanted the girls. He did not know that the Oteros were down to one car. Joe had wrecked the other one a few days before, breaking some ribs. Blah, 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 blah. Rader was 28. He had dark hair and green eyes. He liked to look at pornography. He liked to daydream. Now you see how Dennis Rader has now been inserted into the story of the Oteros. Half of this is just, I'm sure they sat there and tried to tell him, what did you do? What did you do? And he made up stuff, even if it could be true, but maybe he just made that crap up. And now what's happened is the writers have inserted it into the story as if there's no question that Dennis Rader committed these crimes. And so what they do consistently is in these crimes, let's see what they said about him dumping off the car. Let's see. Did they talk about dumping the car? Oh, yeah, I think they did. Okay. Let's see. Now, where'd the car go? Okay, let's see. Okay. Trying to find it. Hold on. Let me see if I can find this. Okay. Where'd it go? Okay. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's Catherine Bright. Now they've jumped ahead. I'm trying to see where they inserted him to dumping the car at the store. Oh, here we go. I knew there had to be something here. Dennis Rader had spent 2 hours with the Oteros. Then he had slid into their Vista cruiser and driven to the Dillon's grocery store. He just made it. The Oteros had run the tank nearly dry. On the way, he kept the hood of his Parker up to hide his face. Before he got out, he adjusted the seat forward to disguise his height. Did he? Or is that just something he was told? That the seat was moved up. The seat was moved up. What'd you do? Oh, I moved it up. He walked to his own car, a white 1962 Impala coupe. So he's claiming his car was in the lot. Okay. But you see, now they've inserted Dennis Rader into everything. And if you go online, you will see Dennis Rader is BTK. Dennis Rader killed 10 people. Dennis Rader didn't kill any more than 10 people. Dennis Rader this and Dennis Rader that. And I don't object to the part with Dennis Rader killing the people he has been literally connected to by evidence that was in his own possession. But it has never been proven he killed the Oteros, not by DNA, because they haven't even told us where the DNA matched to. And I'm going to start guessing. I think that the DNA, if there was any DNA match, it was only Vicky Wegerle. And because Vicky Wegerle was considered a BTK victim, then they just said, okay, so therefore whoever killed Vicky Wegerle killed everybody else, the Oteros and Bright included. So not only the other ones, which clearly are Dennis Rader's crimes, but hey, we just think BTK killed Vicky Wegerle too. So therefore, no, obviously he did Oteros and Bright, even though we can't prove it. So I have a problem with that. I don't like to see law enforcement and prosecutions ever state somebody killed somebody without proof. Because first of all, it can leave a real killer out there that was the real guy. And even if he did do it, you shouldn't claim he did it without proof. You can simply say, we believe he committed these crimes, but we don't have the physical proof to say that he did. That's perfectly okay to say that. I wouldn't have a problem if they said, look, we totally believe he killed, the crimes, the later crimes, that he killed 5 women. We don't have any problem with that. We got him locked down on that. Five people he killed. The other 5 we suspect, but we don't have proof. I don't see any problem with saying that. But apparently they wanted the big hurrah, so they just threw it all together. And now what we don't know is the truth. And it bugs me that we have no idea. You can go on the net. I want to see you do this. Go on the internet and you put in DNA and you tell me if you can come up with any proof that his DNA was specifically linked to. There's vague assertions. Oh yeah, there were some other scenes, and the Otero had semen at it. Okay, does it say that they had a DNA profile from the Otero crime that's specifically linked to Dennis Rader? And the answer to that is no, and you can't find it. But they just vaguely said stuff. Okay, vaguely, and that's you know. It's funny. I've been trying to find that out, whether he was a non-secretor, and I'm looking. I'm trying to look through my books and look online, and I'm a little bit. I don't know if you can find that out. If you have a link that you can find, put that below. Now, again, 11% of the male population are non-secretors, so it's possible that my interesting fellow John was a non-secretor, and Dennis Rader could be a non-secretor as well. And that could be why they think maybe he did do their Oteros. Maybe. But that's not proof, because it's only, you're a part of a population, you're not the guy. Now, if you had that and a whole bunch of other things, like the whole thing with Vicky Wagerly, now they claim that it's very vague still that his DNA matched Vicky Wagerly's, because, again, until 2005, her husband was a suspect. 2005, they had DNA. Why the hell wasn't her husband released from that? Oh, here's another thing. If there was so much DNA, why weren't these cases linked by DNA? Why didn't they say we have got the Otero crime, the Bright crime, the Wagerly crime, all linked with the same DNA? They've never said that. Ever. Only thing we hear about is this Vicky Wagerly DNA that pops up out of nowhere in 2005. Now, maybe they didn't do a very good job of it before, and the husband got stuck being a suspect forever. And that's when they finally got enough of a DNA profile that they could link it to Rader. But I still don't know. We haven't seen anything. It was never proven. It's just guesswork. But did he kill Vicky Wagerly? Yes, he did. The evidence is clear that he did it. But that doesn't mean there's DNA. And so I'm okay with him being, because he sent her driver's license. I mean, he clearly did it. He had her possessions that he got from her home. So he did it. But, and you don't have to prove a crime with DNA. You can prove a crime that way. But if there was DNA, I want to see the profiles on both of them. I want to see how you linked it. I want to know why the husband wasn't, until he sent that information, until he sent her driver's license, why was the husband still a suspect? And suddenly there's DNA. I don't understand it. But if there's any DNA, it would be that crime. It certainly isn't going to be the Oteros. And they throw these things around. 1 crime, 2 crimes, maybe. Right. Some crimes. Okay, you don't have it, do you? Because, if I were the prosecution and I had the DNA links and I had that absolutely to the Oteros and Bright, I'd be shouting that from the rooftops, because I'd have it nailed down. I don't think they had it, so they just went with, okay, you just get in court, you just start talking crap, and everybody will believe you, and then we'll just say you did it. We're happy. So, do we know if John is still alive? I do not, actually. He would be, I think, slightly older than me, in the 70s, if he's still alive. Not sure. He never did get charged with, they say, the death of Jane. So he might still be lurking around. Again, not saying that he committed these crimes. I'm just saying he was a really good suspect. And this is a problem. The police cleared up crimes for their statistics. That can be true. That really can be true. And this is frustrating to me, because when you first of all, if you close the crime, people stop bugging you. That's a fact. You close it, people stop bothering you, and the family stops harassing you, and everybody's got their closure, and you get more money for closing crimes. So it behooves you to close crimes, even if it's administratively or questionable. As long as everybody buys it, it works. So yeah, So let's see what else we have here. Yeah, let's say this is the whole thing. How did he know that when the car was dumped, and how did he know it was Btk? Those are, that's a very good question. That stood out. I mean, when the video crew Well, he said that right at the end of the interview, and everybody was like sort of stunned for a minute. I think everybody sort of got the point, like, wait a minute, how would that be? Again, just because somebody says something, he could be saying stupid stuff too. You know what I'm saying? He could just be just wanted to brag, and in bragging, he ends up, making it look like he's guilty. People do that, and again, that would not be alone enough to say this guy was BTK, the original BTK. There's no way that would prove that, but it would make me as a police officer or a police detective go, gotta look into this guy a little bit more, because why is he saying that? So you still have to have more proof. Let's see what Anna says. The Otero family massacre makes the BTK saga so much worse. Hard to make a pattern. He kill anyone at any time. Yeah, in generally speaking, he was after women. Generally speaking. Vicky Wegerler, her husband wasn't home. He didn't kill the kids. Let's see. Catherine Bright, if that was a BTK before, after, both, I don't know. Same guy. Again, after female. The Otero killings, the claim is he was seeing Hispanics like Julie Otero, who was a full-grown woman, but yet he didn't have any interest in having sex with her. He just liked the little 12-year-old. So, but was the family targeted because it was a sexual crime and they were just all collateral damage, or did somebody have it out for the Oteros? And the sexual stuff with the little girl was just a fun afterthought. Because, when you're talking about these kind of crimes, these vicious kind of crimes, I mean, you're talking about psychopathy in the nth degree. And if we talk about, for example, let's say you got the Mexican mafia, okay? And they're going to knock off some people who are messing with their territory or whatever they got going there. And they go in and they kill a bunch of people, and then they also rape the women. Well, they weren't there to rape the women, but, they're rapeable. They're very rapeable. Same thing in Vietnam. Lots of rapeable people, So sometimes the simple fact is, while you're there, you take advantage of other opportunities. So it's hard to know whether the focus was a sexual homicide or the focus was something else, and the sexual homicide came along with the program. Don't know. That's true. I'm not sure what that matters, but yeah, I mean, yeah, she was that is true though. There were bags put over the heads of the others, and then the little girl was hung up and hung. And there was a theory that Joe was made to watch his family be murdered, which would be also very interesting, because if that's true, that he was being made to watch the family be murdered, there's a whole different component there. Is that just a sadistic thing, that from some serial killer with a good fantasy, or was that because the focus of the crime was Joseph Otero? I don't know, and we'll probably never know. We won't know. This is also true. If it was two killers, it sounds like they both planned these crimes out. Correct. Whether Dennis Rader was the one and only BTK, all of these crimes were planned. If there were two killers, one for the earlier crimes and one for the later crimes that Dennis Rader absolutely committed, yeah, I mean, they both were very, very planned. And the Oteros is quite a bit to take on, you know what I mean, compared to the other ones, which were a little bit easier. So but yeah, definitely both. They're all planned crimes. Nobody just accidentally happened to show up and kill off somebody. So that's true. Rader let kids survive in the van murder. He didn't sexually assault them or leave fluid on them. Yeah. It's the real question is. Yeah, and of course, 12 years old, that is a child, but it's a preteen kid, so it's not the same as a 6-year-old child, a 4-year-old or something like that. It's not totally pedophile type of stuff. But yeah, so was his focus really on kids, or was it focus on adults? No, don't know. Let's see what else you have to say here. That was during the day. How many cars would have been there at that hour? It was during the day, not in the evening. The car was dropped off during the day, that's an interesting point as well. It's risky. It's risky being seen during the day pulling into a parking lot. I don't know why would you just park on a side street and walk away? Why would you pull into the Dillon's parking lot? For what reason? And the only reason I would think would be that it's a comfort zone for you and you know somebody there. So somehow you feel that if you're seen in that lot, no one's going to suspect you because you're the brother of that guy. You know what I mean? More likely than you're a complete stranger to the area and you decide to pull into the parking lot and have people see you and identify you. I don't know. It's a tricky one. But yeah, it's kind of weird that you would pull in broad daylight when you could just dump the car on a side road. That's what I would do. I just take it down the road and dump it and then walk away through some bushes and find my way back to the damn car, my own car. I wouldn't dump it at Dillon's. It's kind of weird. So, let's see. No idea in this guy's special collection of hair. I never got more details on that. This is where if you're not working with law enforcement, you got a lot of unanswered questions. You're talking to people in law enforcement and they're telling you things, but you can't verify those things. So it gets a little tricky. If I were working with them, I'd say, where's the identification? Did you test these things? I mean, I did hear that there were different colors, so that was interesting. But again, I can't verify it, just interesting stuff. You're still confused as to the evidence was for, let me get you back. For the post-1977 murders. Okay, let me see if I can put that back up then. Okay, so post-1977, what was the evidence? Okay, the evidence was, let me throw them back up here. All right. Okay, let me see. Nancy Fox he called in, and let me see. There's definitely evidence of each one of these. Shirley Vian, I think, was a little bit lighter. Let's see. Vicky's body, Vicky Wagerly, that they claim there might be DNA. Original Polaroid photographs and her driver's license were sent in, taped to a letter. Okay. The original of the Wagerly letter was sent to the Eagle in 2004, taped to the sheet of white paper with 3 original Polaroid photos of Vicky's body. Okay. And I think they held the original. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, let me say this again. A photocopy was sent to the Eagle, the Wichita Eagle, in 2004. But in his binder, there was a sheet of white paper with 3 original Polaroid pictures of Vicky's body. So absolutely no question he killed Vicky Wagerly, even without any DNA crap. The Dolores one was in a shallow grave. He had photographs of her in the grave wearing Rader's mask on her face. That was in his possession. So that one's unquestionable. As far as, what is this one here? I thought there was something on Hedge, but I don't see anything on Hedge, interestingly enough. Good point. I'm not sure I see Maureen Hedge in here. And as far as Nancy Fox goes, I think there was, okay, what was it? Hold on a second. Thought there was a phone call after Nancy Fox was murdered. A phone call was made. Some people thought it was my suspect, and some people thought it was Rader. But now I'm blanking here. I'm gonna have to look that one back up again. There was a reason I believe that he did the later ones, the Fox and Vian. The letter was sent to. This was the letter. Remember the letter? Let's see. Where's the letter? So this letter was sent. This was the letter that was sent that said he did, he claimed he did the Otero. So he doesn't talk about Bright at all. But then he talks about Shirley Vian, and he talks about Nancy, I believe, in here somewhere. And I'm a little confused too, Steve. So this is one of the problems is, there's a lot of information here, and it's very vague to some extent as to what they actually found where and what proves what. Wait a minute, let me get your. And so I absolutely know Wegerle and Davis, absolutely, and I think there was now I'm trying to think about the Fox and now I'm blanking. I say it gets really confusing as to what they actually found in his possession that was proof, or they just said it was proof. That a letter was sent and he had similar letters. That's not proof. I don't think they never found a typewriter. So no. So there's limits. So yeah, good question. But I'm gonna have to relook that one up again because now I'm blanking myself. Yes, that is how the floppy disk was how they caught him, because he got stupid and he decided he was going to tease the police because now he was a senior citizen, and he just thought he'd get away with it, and he didn't, and they caught him with it. That was the good police work. There's nothing wrong with the police work that happened in 2004 that caught him. The problem I have is with the claim that anything before 2004 was actually working, and that once he went to court with this phony prosecution stuff, that there was proof that he committed all the crimes they said. That was my issue. And again, it's just that I don't like people being deceived, especially when it comes down to law enforcement and to the criminal justice system. There's nothing wrong with saying you just don't know. I have a great suspect in this case. I can't say he committed this crime. I just don't know. I think he was a really good Otero suspect and Bright suspect. But I'm not able to prove it, so therefore I'm not going to say he did it. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with saying he was just a good suspect, because sometimes you have 2 or 3 good suspects and 2 of them don't pan out. There are some cases where I'm absolutely sure I know who did it and didn't go well. Didn't get arrested, and it's frustrating for me. But if I just have a good suspect and I just can't prove it, I'm like, okay, I could stand behind them not prosecuting him, because even though I think he did it, I would say you don't have enough for prosecution. I don't hold that against you, because you got to have enough. So. Yeah, yes, he did. So that's an interesting thing that he did do that description about Bright's brother. Again, they said he was shot in the head, so they didn't know whether to believe him or not. I don't know that shooting him in the head had something to do with that. It was said that BT's book on BTK drew BTK out of retirement. When did he publish that book? He published this in 2000. Yeah, the first printing was 2005. So 2004 was when he probably completed it, because you got a year before you can get that thing actually published. But most of the book does not have Rader in it, so it's interesting. I think it was that 30th. He wrote that because it was going to coincide with the 30th anniversary, and then they made a big deal of the 30th anniversary, and then and it worked for bringing out a serial killer. So I'm okay with that. That's cool. That's fine. Let's see what else we have here. That is not true. Where do you no, see, this is not true, Christine. That's what I'm saying. They did not match DNA found at the Otero scene. This is not true. This is my problem. There is no proof that this is true. This is the alluded to part. This is alluded to all over the internet, and the media alluded to it. As far as I know, the Otero DNA was degraded to the point where there was no way to possibly link it to anybody, and they go back and forth on that. They say Vicky Wegerle, and then they say some crime scenes, and they say 2 crime scenes. So that's not true. So don't buy that. When somebody can come up with a DNA breakdown with absolute DNA report of the Otero crime and a DNA report of Rader, and you can get 10 experts to put those together and say that's the same dude. I'm okay with that. But where is that evidence? That's just the media reporting bullcrap. That's all it is. Media's reporting whatever they've been told. They're guessing. They're guessing that it matched something at the Otero scene. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. So don't believe stuff that's what I'm trying to. This is why my whole show is here, Christine, because this is what people believe, and it's not your fault. I mean, wouldn't you think if ABC News comes and says, "Oh yeah, they match it to the Otero scene," that there's truth to this? But there isn't truth to this. That's the problem I have. I actually wrote a letter to the prosecutor, and she was not very nice when I pointed out that I would like to know what the DNA actually matched to. She didn't come back and say, "Oh, we have the solid evidence that it matched to these 2 or 3 crime scenes." She doesn't. She comes back with, she was just not pleasant, shall we say. And why wouldn't they shout that from the hills? I mean, I would. I got DNA proof that links somebody to something. I'm going to shout that out. I'm going to show that to the world. They don't have it. I would like to see it. Show it to me. Show it to me, and don't just allude to it in the media and then let the media run with it and sit back and go, that worked. Now the media is saying Otero scene matches. Don't buy it. I'm not saying he couldn't have committed the crime. I'm just simply saying that's not proven. Absolutely not proven. Why? Why not? Why not? People, these are psychopaths. Things are fun. These are fun things to do. Now, admittedly, it is pretty rare for serial killers to actually taunt the police. I mean, this is the stuff that Hollywood movies are made out of. Generally speaking, they don't have anything to do with the police or want anything to do with the police. They want to do the killing part. The raping and killing part is fun. And they want to go home, and they don't want to be caught. And they don't have the time or energy or the smarts to sit there and try to figure out how to mess around with the police. So this is unique. And so the only reason you could say that, it's so unique that therefore all the crimes are connected, because it's hard to believe that there's an original BTK and then some guy copied the concept of, playing with the police. But that doesn't mean he couldn't have, It's fun. That's all I can say. It's fun. It's a fun thing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what? So this is again garbage. Traces of Rader's semen was found at the Otero scene. It was matched by DNA. Where do you get that information? From the grunge. Who got it from ABC? Who got it from some other person who is claiming this? There's no proof of this. I've looked and looked for the proof. Because, hey, I am curious. As a profiler, as I say, I had a good suspect. But I'm okay with him not being the guy. I mean, it's, one of the things you got to do as a profiler or as a detective, the concept is to find the right person and eventually prosecute him with the evidence that proves he's the right person. And, your personal feelings like, I thought I had the right guy. Crap, it's not him. You can't spend all your life worrying about the fact that your particular lead didn't pan out. I mean, the detectives follow tons of leads that don't pan out all the time. I mean, that's especially tricky crimes. They went on a whole DNA thing of the whole neighborhood. Everybody give me your DNA. That's the way it works. I mean, I don't have a big issue, a big ego that says, hey, I just wanted to come back and prove my guy did it. No, my concern is that they're sending out information that is not proven, and I want people to know it's not proven. If they're people from Wichita, the prosecutor wants to come back now and prove to Pat Brown, and all those people that have the idiocy to listen to her channel would like to come back with the scientific reports, hopefully not fudged, the true scientific reports that match DNA. Okay, but I will ask you, if this existed, why didn't you bring this out in 2005? Why wasn't this made public? Why is this just told to media? And as far as I know, there is no evidence. First of all, I don't understand that look how early. This is 1974. This is like 20 years before DNA ever made any real appearance. So, and then 20 years ago, and how much, then they kept, let's put it this way. They knew he was a non-secretor. They did a little bit of studies on it. But unless they had a sufficient quantity to even do anything with, and it didn't degrade over time, and we're talking about a whole lot of time, 20 years worth of time, unless they had a substantial, decent sample to do the proper DNA on, they don't have anything. And I was told it was highly degraded. So that there was simply nothing to work with outside of the fact he was a non-secretor, and they knew that. But other than that, there wasn't that proof, which is why I think it's interesting that they keep pointing out Wagerly, which was later. So we're talking about 10 years later, and maybe that wasn't as degraded. Maybe they did go back and test that, but again, they haven't even proven that. For God's sakes, where's the testing? Where is anything? They didn't take it to court to prove. They just went there and let him tell his story. And that makes me suspicious, sorry. Makes me really suspicious. That is absolutely not true. Reason he sent the police messages because he secretly wanted to be caught. Nobody ever wants to be caught. That's one of those huge myths. They never want to be caught. What'll happen is once they are caught, then they'll play the game that they can play and enjoy as much as that. They'll change their game, that's all. I've never known a serial killer wants to be caught. They may claim that when they know they're going to be caught anyway, so they can play a new game, but no. Could have been mistaken for Hispanic. Possibly. That's possibly true. Actually, my suspect under certain conditions could also be mistaken for Hispanic. So, again, it depends on the lighting, whatever. Who knows? He had a degree in criminal justice, so one would think he's smarter than that. I'm going to tell you right now, criminal justice is one of the easiest degrees you can possibly get. I have one. I have a master's degree from Boston University, and it wasn't very hard to get. Admittedly, I've been in the field for years, so it was easy for me, but still. Serial killers love criminal justice degrees. They go for them all the time because they're very easy to get, especially at community college. Not that hard. So it's not like engineering, or high tech stuff. Programming, yeah. Thanks, Pat. Christine says, makes us aware the internet is not with accurate information. This is correct. I just want people to be aware, because when you go there and you see it's there, some kind of, they're alluding to something, you go, oh, that must be true then. And then you go to 100 other sites and they all say the same thing. You think, well, that must be true. Not necessarily so. Yes, Lisa. We should question all and every confession of a serial killer. Law enforcement news conferences and police reports. Yes, I mean, and it's not to be mean. It's not to be disrespectful of law enforcement or of the prosecution. They have hard jobs to do. But just proof should be proof. And otherwise, they should simply say, if we got this guy on one crime, that's fantastic. And we believe he committed these other 4, but we just can't prove it. But to go in and sometimes feed information enough for him to confess and then say we gave him a plea deal, he confessed to 5 crimes. Did he do all 5 crimes? Or is he just taking the plea deal, And who's around to say that he's not telling the truth about the crimes? I mean, take the Otero crimes. I didn't see anything in them, particularly that Rader said, that made me go, wow, he knew something nobody could have known. But even then, we didn't see any early interrogations. And if you look at the issue with the Superbikes and Todd Colehep that I have my video on that, he said some things to detectives about me that I know he got from the sheriff, because the sheriff didn't like me. And so what happened was, after I'd worked with the sheriff's department and later on things went downhill and he decided to to attack me, the things what Todd Colehep said was Pat's profile was completely wrong about the Superbikes guy. My profile had never been public. And some of the things he said, I know he got from the sheriff. So when somebody's not on camera or on tape, if nobody's recording that interview, information can be passed to that person before you turn the tape recorder on. Now, in theory, that's not supposed to happen. Does it happen? Yes, sometimes it does happen. So, I don't know how much Rader got over the years through contacts, through leaks, to the public, for whatever reasons he learned stuff. Or was it just once he got caught, he started having conversations with the police, and they he said certain things, and they kind of helped him, twist those a little bit to what match the evidence. Is that what happened? I don't know. I'm not saying they did that, but we don't know because we never saw anything except that crap in court. That's it. That's all we saw. I hope so, Martin. That's the point of this show. Again, I'm not here to prove or disprove that Dennis Rader killed 5 or 10 people. He was the one and only BTK, or that he was a copycat BTK. The point is that I want people to understand about evidence and how it's Yes, I did say he is supposedly 5'10". That's what I heard. He's no. That's not true. See, Stevie, this is the whole thing again. I remember now. He moved the car seat forward to deceive. You don't know that. That's not true. He said he moved the car seat forward to deceive. There's a difference between the two things. First of all, we don't know anybody moved the car seat backward or forward ever. Okay, let's just say you're running from the scene, and let's say a 5'6" guy would jump in the car and be comfy. But a 5'10" or a 5'11" guy would have that little extra leg and think, man, this isn't very comfortable. But he's only going to Dillon's. I mean, I've driven cars that are way back, and I've driven cars that are way up, and never changed the seat. Have you ever gone in a car that you couldn't figure out how to change the seat, so you just had to drive it the way it was? Because you can't figure out, where's the button? And dude want to get out of there. He's jumping in the vehicle, and he's trying to get out as quickly as he can. He may not waste any of his time with a stupid seat. If he has to be crunched up, he'll be crunched up. That's all. So I don't think the seat makes any damn difference. There's no proof at all of anything about the seat. He moved the seat was back, and he had to move the seat back to be comfortable, and then he moved the seat back forward to prove that to cover up the fact that the taller killer drove the car. There is not one shred of proof of that. Now, I don't know whether the police gave that information to Rader. I don't know if that really now, could it have really happened? Yes. Rader could have theoretically, in a rush, in spite of the rush, decided he was uncomfy and moved the seat back. And when he got there, he was so smart, even though he was all freaked out over the fact he just killed 4 people. And you got to think about this again. He is in the car lot of Dillon's. How much time do you want to waste sitting there? Or do you want to get the hell out of Dodge? I mean, does he really want to, I got to move that seat back up so nobody thinks I'm 5'11". Does he even care if anybody thinks he's 5'11"? Does it really matter? In my opinion, I'd rather get the hell out of the car lot and not be seen than having somebody worry about my height. So I question that A, he moved the car seat back, and B, they moved the car seat back up. I don't know that any of that's true. He said that. That doesn't make it true. So this again, we don't understand the difference between he did and he said he did. 2 different things. Well, Lisa, this is a question. I never ever realized there was no biological evidence of post-1977 murders. I don't know. I'm not saying that, Lisa. I don't think I said that. What I said was we haven't got the evidence. There's a difference. They did a familial link with the dogs. They did a familial link with theoretically, if they went after the daughter for a familial link, you'd think they had some kind of DNA. Theoretically, it's supposed to be Vicky Wagerly, not the Oteros. And then they went and got his DNA later, and there's not any real proof that his DNA absolutely matched to Vicky Wagerly's, the DNA there, or back to the Oteros. The problem is they just haven't proven it. They keep alluding to things and changing their, one crime, two crime, this crime, that crime. Just don't know. We just don't know. And if somebody can come up with, I'd be curious. If somebody comes up with some absolute proof, link it into the comments below. Not just ABC said, because that's all bogus crap. Because here's the thing: you go to ABC and you say, "I want to talk to that reporter," and you say to the reporter, "Where'd you get your information from?" ABC guy will say, "I got it from NBC." And there you go. How good is that? Yeah. As far as the double lives go, yes, Anna, they do live double lives. Yes. Especially the more sadistic versions. They're usually more successful as far as having families and jobs. They're more technical guys, the ones who put a lot of effort into things. They usually have they're the ones with the families and the jobs. The guys who jump out, in the park and whack people on the head and rape them and run away, they're the ones that keep moving from place to place and have more trouble with relationships. Keeping one relationship doesn't mean they can't have it, but just it's less likely because they're kind of sloppier and have trouble keeping jobs. There you go. That's absolutely true, Red Rum. If a lie gets repeated enough, it becomes truth. That's true. And that's why I say you have to go back, and when you hear something enough, go back and say, what is the source that's giving me this information? I want to know. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to know the source and knowing whether the source is credible or not, and whether the source can provide evidence, or they're just, we have a word from a reliable source. So-and-so said, okay, you go to so-and-so. All right, so-and-so, do you have evidence? Well, it's in the police files. Okay. Why can't it be public knowledge? If it's the thing that linked them to the crime, why can't it be public knowledge? And I've never seen, this stuff is really well hidden, and I don't understand why. So, Lakeside says, gotta go. Bye, Lakeside. Let's see. Well, that's probably true. Rader would hate to be called a copycat. Of course, he'd claim all. Well, and you get to double your numbers. Why not? Why not? Yes. Law enforcement may have the evidence. This is true. And at points when the cases are still open and you can't release that information, it makes sense that the public doesn't need to know really. But why can't the public know now? If you did a DNA match, why don't you have why isn't that out there? Why don't you show the scientific link? My guess is it doesn't exist. Let's see. What are three deductive types of analysis we can apply to the BTK case? Meaning A equals B, therefore A equals C, or A doesn't equal C, in terms of probability versus possibility. That's an interesting question. We don't have A equals B, because that's what they're saying. If he did Vicky Wagerly, therefore he did Oteros. That's nonsense. And we don't have any A doesn't equal C, because we don't have proof that he didn't. So that's the question. So if he committed, that's the problem. We just don't. We have these two groups of crimes. We just don't. We have this one's fairly connected, but with this one, it's questionable, and we're definitely questionable as far as whether they go together or not. So I don't know. The probability. He was in the area. They're creepy crimes like you could do. There's some similarities in the crimes as far as methodology goes, but that doesn't prove anything. Again, if we're talking about proof as opposed to could have, maybe, looks like he could. He doesn't have an alibi for the day, apparently. I mean, but then, it's going back 20 years. Why would he have an alibi for the day, unless he was specifically out of the, unless he was out of the country or something. So if, he was just in the area, I don't, what was he? He claims he was available that day. I don't know. Was he available that day or not? I don't know. I know that my suspect that I had looked at, it was claimed that he was off of work that day. Again, I heard that claim from a detective. I can't prove it. Because again, just because the detective is saying something, I'm like, ooh, that's interesting, doesn't mean he's any more telling me the truth than some guy who's saying, oh, look, Rader did it. I just don't know. Kay says, I'm loving this video. Thank you very much. I'm glad. This was a really hard one for me to do. It really was. And the reason it's so hard is that it's the kind of thing people give you a lot of flack over because it's not a cool story about Dennis Rader, and it's not a cool story linking Dennis Rader to everything. It's one of those saying we don't know certain things, and that pisses people off a lot. And then there'll be those people that say, well, see, Pat Brown had a suspect, and because it proved out to be Dennis Rader, now she's just she's all butthurt, her suspect didn't turn out, so she failed at her job as a profiler, so now she's going to say Dennis Rader didn't do it. So probably a wiser person would just not do this. But I like teaching, and I like education, and I like understanding. So I'm willing to go out here and say, hey, these are the interesting issues. Why are we afraid to look at these issues? And if somebody comes up with the evidence, I say, it drives me crazy. I look like heck for the DNA evidence on Rader, and I can't come up with it. And I went through so many pages of Google, I was like, and I went through the books I had, I can't come up with it. And I'm like, well, shouldn't it be someplace? Because I tried. I really did try. Well, yes and no. There are this is what they always say. He knew aspects of the Otero crimes not known to the public. Okay. What aspects? Known to which public? You'd be surprised how much of the public knew stuff. Now, the letter itself was supposedly not given out to the public. Oh, I don't know if I can find this in this book. I think it was in this book. Okay, here we go. This is interesting. Check this out. There was no mention in the BTK letter of Catherine Bright's murder, which is true. Or Kevin Bright's attempted murder, which is also true. So you'd think the guy would have taken credit for that, right? He didn't. He only talked about the Oteros. So either the Otero crime wasn't linked to the Bright crime, or the Otero letter wasn't even from BTK. Now listen to what this says. Not everyone believed the letter was from the Otero's killer, because the description of the Otero crime scenes in the letter did not match the crime scene photos. There was strong feeling in the 1974 Wichita police that the letter was a hoax. The feeling that BTK was a hoax didn't completely dissipate among investigating officers until May of 2004, which is the Rader time, right? So, Jack Bruce, who was the deputy chief of police at the time, thought this letter from BTK was a prank from someone within the department, and he had good reasons to think so. He went and accused 2 officers of writing the letter as a prank. The letter had errors, not just typos, but errors of fact. The color of some of the clothing and its descriptions were wrong. And then they decided they weren't going to publish it. But isn't that interesting? You see? They thought it was a hoax and that lots of stuff was wrong in the letter. So what if the guy killed the Oteros never wrote the damn letter? Maybe he just killed the Oteros and then killed Catherine Bright, and that was it. That was it. He never wrote the damn letter. Maybe it was a hoax, and then maybe Rader took up on the hoax. Maybe Rader knew somebody in the police department and borrowed some of the information and wrote the letter. I don't know. You see what I'm saying? There's not absolutes in this case. And this is the stuff nobody knows. And it just, I find that fascinating. But you see now, when you read about BTK and you go on the internet and you go to Wikipedia and all these websites, you go to Oxygen Channel and all that. It's all the Dennis Rader show now. And all that stuff that was questionable before has vanished, gone. And that's why, I don't know that I was a big fan of the book when it came out, but I'm a fan of it now, because now you see stuff that you will never see in any documentary today, or in most of the websites. You won't see any of this information, because now it's all suppressed, because now we have the answer. Interesting, huh? Just amazing. Just amazing. That's an interesting question. If police ever found out a crime they thought was committed by a serial killer was not, would they reopen the case even though there is somebody in prison for it? Probably not. It's very rare unless there's something major that can link them, which would be DNA. Suddenly there is a DNA match to somebody else, and then they're kind of like, oops, and then they look really bad. And then, that would be the only way. If somebody's just bragging about the case and I did it, no, they'd never touch. They'd never do anything about it. This is what happens with the Superbike case and Todd Kolb. Todd Kolb's confessed, but unfortunately, there's no DNA in that case. So even though I know I'll lay my life on that one. Todd Kolb didn't kill those people in Superbikes. I have a good suspect. I can't prove it, but I have a good suspect. But I don't believe it's Todd Kolb. So the problem now is, even though his confession is complete garbage and doesn't match the scene, it really doesn't, everybody believes it. So how would somebody else come along and say, I did it? I mean, they would have to, here's the only thing. He would have to have the exact weapon and the exact ballistics matching the scene. And maybe took some photos of himself doing it, a little video, on his camera while he did it, something. He'd have to have something very much of evidence, just rather than his own personal statement. Because if he just has a personal statement, the police, even if they believed him, would tell him to go away, because the prosecution's not going to look bad. So the only way would be if there's no way that the prosecution can get out of the fact they prosecuted the wrong person for the crime. I would say that. So, yeah. That's it. Is there anything else here? What? I have to look that up. Red Rum says, fun fact, DNA was discovered thanks to seal blubber. That I have not known. I mean, that's a new one. I am going to look that one up. Seal blubber? Joe asks, a bit of a random question. To what extent has the advent of DNA increased successful watertight convictions? Oh, a lot. Absolutely, a lot. If the DNA is actual DNA and proven to be the DNA, that's helped a great deal. Especially what happened was in the 20 or 30 years ago. Let's say, for example, in this case, that that time the killer didn't worry about leaving DNA because he's like, hey, DNA didn't exist, so he just leaves semen everywhere, He didn't wear a condom because he was having fun, So, or he's spitting on people, whatever he's doing, leaving his blood. He didn't care. A little bit ABO, blood type crap. That's not going to prove me, It can put me in a little group, but it's not going to make it be me. But now what happened was some of these scenes really do have DNA that can be, because they need way less DNA than they used to, a little bit now, that they can actually go back to those old scenes where the guy was tossing his semen around and get a good DNA profile and match somebody who's already in prison, for example, or, for example, the best example I have recently is the Darlene Krashuk case in Colorado. That was 30 years ago. There was DNA. I always knew there was DNA in that case. I did go and I did profile that crime. And the guy that got caught 30 years later, he he claims, oh, I didn't do it, even though my DNA is there. I don't know how my DNA got there. But it turned out he was not only in Colorado at the time, but it frequented the same bar the girl went to. So, it's looking pretty guilty to me. So DNA is really locking people in, because without the DNA, you could say the guy was there, he was in the area, he acts squirrely, but you can get people with circumstantial, but we all know circumstantial is way harder than DNA, which is like pretty airtight most of the time, except for the point that sometimes, for example, a girl can have sex with somebody and then that guy leaves, and then the rapist comes in and kills her and uses a condom, and then the poor schmuck that had consensual sex with her is the one that's nailed for the crime. So it's not perfect. You got to be very careful too about how it's used and how it's misused. So, but yeah, I think it's probably done a lot for cold cases especially. But now killers are getting a little smarter, not leaving it there. So, oh, thank you, Boris. I appreciate that. I very much appreciate that. This is true, Molly. Many of these cases demonstrate proof beyond a reasonable doubt can be very elusive. Yeah, it can be. And, sometimes that's why they've been, if they can find a way to close the case down with a confession or just any kind of, plea deal, they'll do it, because it's a lot easier than going to court and trying to get, a conviction. Especially when you got something like these 10 different murders. It's a lot of money, too. Let's go for the cheapy thing. If we can just get the guy to confess, we don't have to spend a huge amount of money, because that would be a phenomenal amount of money. It's like, so I understand why they'd want to close it down. I just bothers me that I don't see that they have the proof for the first 5 victims. I don't see it. Oh, that's amazing. I've been waiting for this one a long time. Really? Okay. I'm glad, because I didn't think anybody had been. I think everybody pretty much assumes that Dennis Rader is the one and only BTK, and had never questioned anything that happened. And that's what bugged me, because I know so much other stuff happened that they have no awareness of, because it was a very good press conference, and I mean his testimony in court is very compelling. I mean, if I didn't know what I know, I would definitely look at that and go, he did them all. He absolutely did them all. And I wouldn't even think about questioning, is there really DNA? Did he really do them all? I don't know that I think about that. So, there you go. Wait a minute, what did you say here? Oh, K-Rob, but do you know about the Atlantic child murders? Yes. Many think Wayne did not murder each of the kids the police said he did. Some parents and others might have gotten away with murder. Now, that's a contentious one. I have to go back over that case. There are people that claim that Wayne Williams didn't do any of the crimes, and I don't buy that. That they might have grouped in a few that shouldn't have been in there. Could happen. I don't know. I'm gonna have to do a lot of research on that one, because it's been a long time since I've looked at that particular case. So. What? Say what? Wait a minute, what? Why don't you have join your channel here? I'd join in a heartbeat if you did. I don't understand what that even means. Charles, what does that mean? So if you want to just subscribe, you just hit the subscribe button. If you want to join Patreon, you just go below and hit the Patreon button and go to Patreon. I don't know that there's. Oh, I think you're talking about YouTube. The YouTube membership thing, there's a big problem with the YouTube membership thing. That's why I haven't done it. One is that they take such a high amount of the money people give that I don't feel good about that. Yeah. And then I've already got one thing that works really well, and I don't really want to start up a whole secondary one. It's just, believe me, it gets so complicated and so confusing. I'm already having, it's hard. It really is rough. So. There you go. That's my reason. Lisa says, Pat Brown, one of the few YouTubers who talks about a crime with logic and common sense. Aw, love all your videos for that very reason. Well, thank you, Lisa. That's my hope for doing this. It's not just to tell a story, and it's not to brag on something and say, I was right about this or whatever. It's to help people really understand, because I've learned a lot in my days. You know what I mean? I've looked at some things I've done in my earlier years and gone, hide that one. Not talking about it. But, you know, we're all learners. We're all learners at all times. And the more we can, the more true information we can get a hold of, more logical stuff, the more we're able to, you know, not be snowed by things and not have, you know, just be a media outlet just to, you know, be cool or something. You know, I mean, that's what happens. People, you know, love certain outfits. You know, they're really done, they're fancy, they're cool, and they're like, oh, wow, this must be true. And like, but it isn't. You know, and that bothers me because I want people to, you know, hear truth and learn things and also be open. You know, not always having to agree with me on every single thing. To go out and be curious for yourself and to you know, do your own research. Hopefully not on grifter channels, you know. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I know what happened. Oh no. Oh, you know what? Okay, I'm going to tell you what happened. Because this is not supposed to be public. This was supposed to be private, and all my information is on the one that I was doing, and then we had the internet issue. So I threw up a new link, but I didn't transfer all the information over yet because it wasn't supposed to be public. I was going to finish this and then transfer the information. That's why. Oh, that's what you're talking about. Come back. Oh, you can go to any one of my other recent live videos, and the Patreon button will be there. But if you come back in 30 minutes from when the show is over, I'm going to transfer all the information over. This was a total accident. This was not supposed to be public until I finished the show. So a lot of you folks are here because I accidentally made this public, and therefore you see absolutely nothing here. And this only says Dennis Rader and BTK too. This is because that's not the name of the show either. I threw that up as a temporary link. I'm surprised anybody's here at all seeing this, considering it wasn't even properly put up. So it was just a emergency link because the other link failed. Something went wrong with the internet, and I didn't want to do that. So yes, I will put that. Just give me. I say I'm going to end the show, and just come back and look under the just look under the information, you know, right underneath. I'll transfer it over in the next 5 minutes after the show, and you'll see everything there. But that's why everything looks screwy, because this was not an official show. You know, the other one was the official one that fell apart. Live shows are fun to do. They just have so many issues, and you know. So, thank you. I'm really glad you liked the show, Lisa. I was like really questioning my sanity in even doing this one. And you know, there's also so much information. You wouldn't believe how much information I have that I collected during the actual investigative part. But I'm not going to bring all that to light because it's unnecessary. But even trying to find it from 20 years ago, 20 years ago, something like that, was really, really difficult. So, well, anyone can watch, but they weren't supposed to be here in the chat room. You're right. You're right. I couldn't figure this out, Joe. I'm like, why the heck are all these people here? You know, and I mean, you people have been really good this time, so thank you very much for that. They say it's only $5 a month. I'll transfer over the links. It's only $5 a month. I'm telling you, this channel is struggling to stay even survive, and that's why I have the Patreon thing. $5 a month, you can come to all these live crime shows. It supports the channel, and I have normally a very nice room where I don't have to worry about bots, and I don't have to worry about people with agendas. And like, somebody could come in here who, you know, thinks I'm completely wrong, and they just come in and they take over the chat room, and you know, all that, and it's just a pain in the butt. So I prefer not to have that happen. So I thank you very much, Anne. I appreciate that. And thank you, Doreen. I'm so glad this worked out. You know, thank you, Carrie. I mean, and thank you, Sony. I really questioned even doing this show, but okay, I'm glad I did. So anyway, I'm going to end the show now. Give me 5 minutes. I'm going to transfer all the information over and fix the whole thing up because, as I say, this was not supposed to be the official show. But things were just problems. Oh, okay. I will answer this quick. Yes. Did you hear that the Met has said they're finally closing Operation Grange later this year? I just read that today. This is the Madeleine McCann case. They're now admitting there's no evidence for the German dude, which we've all said forever, and hopefully they will close it down. And I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to close it down and say the German guy did it, but we just can't prove it. Or they're just going to close it down and just finally slither away. But yes, I did. I should talk about that a little bit more. Joe says it wouldn't be a Pat show without some technological hiccups after your signature. It is not supposed to be. I had a new router coming. It's now 5 days late, you know. Yeah, you're right. It wouldn't be me. So annoying though. I just like, and that's why people don't do live shows, because this is what happens. So anyway, okay, I'm going to close the show down. I'm going to fix everything up. If you're here and you want to join Patreon, please do. Believe me, I really need the support. I hate begging, but I do want to beg. And all the links will be below. So as soon as give me 5 minutes, and I'll take care of it. I'll see you next time.